Hey, folks, welcome to another edition of Dog Walk Talk presented to you by DawgsHQ. As always, I'm your host, Jake Roos, and with me, as always, the illustrious beat writer over at DawgsHQ, the man on the spot at all times. That's Palmer Toms. PT, what's good with you, man?
Not with you as always. I mean, we've been apart this week. You talked with Matt, I talked with Clint. Some good shows there. So if you're just tuning in thinking that you're getting your late in the week preview from Jake and Palmer, well, you've missed a lot and you got a lot of catching up to do. It's been a busy week as we prepare to see Georgia take on Alabama for the SEC championship on Saturday. Glad to be in here today previewing it with you, Jake.
Yeah, no question. I mean, like you said, some great content from both of those guys. Really encourage you to go back and check out both of those podcasts. Matt was fantastic. I really enjoyed being on with him, and I know Palmer did with Clint as well. Some deep insight from both of those guys. And, hey, keep up with that stuff Matt Zenitz is doing, man. Go follow that dude on Twitter because he is breaking it left and right when it comes to these coaching hires. And look, Georgia, we talked about it in the podcast, may not come out of this thing unscathed when it comes to these coaching hires. The more of these openings there are, the more likely it becomes that somebody may get poached. So go check that out. But we're going to turn the page because we covered all that earlier in the week, and it's here, man. I mean, the most wonderful time of the year. And I am not talking Christmas because I'm a bit of a Grinch myself, but it's SEC title game. And Dogs and Crimson Tide back at it. Not unexpected. Felt like the matchup that was brewing all year. We've all just kind of been waiting patiently for it, and now it's here. I guess, Palmer, this far out of the game, which is not very far at all, you're feeling. What's kind of going through your mind when you're thinking about this one?
Yeah, it's not far out at all. Like you said, we've heard the last from Kirby Smart, last from Nick Saban this week, with the exception of if you're a avid listener to the Coach's Call-In show, which there's not much calling in to do there. But, I think that both of these teams are coming to this game very well prepared, but they both know what's at stake for Georgia. It's an SEC championship, their first since 2017, and it's a win over Alabama. I mean, that you could make the case that the win over Alabama would mean just as much as the SEC championship to Kirby Smart and his staff. I know that they've had their opportunities to beat Alabama. They've had their opportunities to win SEC championships, both against Alabama and not against Alabama. I mean, this is their fourth appearance, and they'll have played, coming into this game, they'll have played Auburn, Alabama, and LSU for SEC championships. And having won that one in 2017, I think that, you get the sense from Kirby that one meant a lot to them because it was their first as a staff. It was their second year together, and that they were, putting Georgia back on the map. But I think that as you've come out of that game, since that game, Georgia has played Alabama three times in the 2018 national championship game, 2018 SEC championship game, and then last year during the 2020 regular season. And Alabama's gotten the best of them each of those three times. Crimson Tide have led at the half. Georgia has led at the half, and the Crimson Tide has come out on top each of those three times. And so, I think that you wouldn't hear them say it, but I think it really does mean a lot that they get this chance to play Alabama, that is Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide on the other sideline. So, a lot to break down with this game. I think that it's really an interesting one, like Clint and I were talking about earlier this week, just from the perspective of it's not often that you see Alabama as an underdog. More often than not, they are, the favorite. And the last two times that they have been underdogs, this one included, have been against Georgia. That 2015 game against the Bulldogs in the last year of Kirby Smart being over in Tuscaloosa before he made the trip to Athens. I think that it says a lot about what this Georgia team has accomplished so far in the regular season. But at the same time, the players, the coaches, everybody knows that there is still so much to accomplish.
I feel like you were just dancing around the phrase, it just means more. You were just all around it when you were talking about what this one means to Georgia. Certainly, look, that 2017 game, I think that put Georgia where they are now. That was the springboard Kirby Smart needed to really get this thing going in the direction that it has, and probably with the rapidity that it has. I mean, I think that's also to be considered here. Georgia has played a number of top tier bowl games. They've been a kind of a constant fixture in the top five, making appearances there. It seems like year in and year out, finishing the year. So it was big. It was big, and this one's big as well. And to me, this one is just like, I don't know, the next logical step, in my opinion. It's at some point you're going to have to paraphrase or well, it's not even a paraphrase. It's to quote Ric Flair, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And at some point you're going to have to beat Alabama. I mean, under Nick Saban, in my opinion, because that to me can aid in, I'm not willing to say that this is going to be a changing of the guard all of a sudden, but it definitely puts, I think, a lot of people on notice a little bit closer about, where Georgia is and how Georgia factors into the college football world. And so this is a big one. I mean, there's no question about it. It's Kirby's first opportunity, or well, next opportunity, I guess, not his first, but his next opportunity to try to pull out a win against Nick Saban, something that only Jimbo Fisher has been able to do as a former assistant. That's impactful. That's one of those storylines that gets mentioned every time one of those guys plays against Nick Saban. But, to do it on this stage and with what's at stake on the line, I think that means a lot, because you've got a chance not only to knock off your mentor, you got a chance to knock him out of contention as well. And that's, to me, it's like it's like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker facing off kind of deal. I mean, it's he can kick him into the pit with this one, and I think that would go a long way to Georgia's national perception. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I kind of overstating that? I mean, what's your feel, I guess, from the opportunity that's ahead for Kirby if he is able to pull this one out?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right there in the fact that this one, it does mean more because Georgia has that opportunity to knock Alabama out of the playoff. I mean, of the 28 playoff spots over the course of the playoff history since 2014, 20 of them have been, accounted for by Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. There is Georgia has the chance to knock Alabama out of said playoff this year and make it so that none of those teams are in it, which would give them probably the best chance of, to win it, to win it all, by knocking out Alabama and clearing that hurdle. I think that is, like we've said so many times, that is one of these last hurdles for Kirby Smart to clear. I think that obviously the national championship trophy is the one that would be the last hurdle, but I think that beating Alabama is one of the hurdles that you've got to clear to get to that point. He's won an SEC championship before. He's made the college football playoffs. He's made the national championship game. But I think that the two big ones that are still out there are Alabama and the national championship game, national championship trophy, raising that one in Indianapolis this year. And by beating Alabama in the SEC championship, you have a good chance to knock off both of those things off of your, check mark list for Kirby Smart.
Yeah. And I don't even know so much. I mean, I guess they're inextricable, but to me, it's like, Alabama with another coach, who cares, right? It's about knocking off Nick Saban. It's about that idea of the student becomes the teacher.
And those two have been so tied together for the last, several years that, when you think Alabama, you think Nick Saban. So when I say beating Alabama, beating Nick Saban is beating Alabama.
No doubt. I guess going into this one, Paul, when you're breaking this down, I mean, we've had a chance to kind of have all week to ruminate on this and to, read the punditry and see the film and talk to the experts and get all these opinions. I guess going into this, what's your feel? I mean, where do you kind of see this going?
Yeah, I think the biggest storyline for this game is that Georgia's dominant defense, it's strength on strength for Alabama and Georgia. It is Georgia's dominant defense against Alabama's offense and the explosive offense that is, number 5 in the country in terms of scoring, number 7 in terms of passing yards per game. They are number 77 in terms of rushing yards per game. So that is where the bread and butter is for this Alabama offense. It's being able to move the ball with Bryce Young, Jamison Williams, and John Mechie. These wide receivers are talented. I think, with the exception of maybe Ohio State, this is probably the most talented group of wide receivers that there is in college football. And you could probably make the case that Alabama is wide receiver U. And so,
yes.
Over the last couple of years, you've seen the way that Alabama has won football games has been and beaten Georgia has been with these very talented wide receivers. I think that this Georgia defense is ready to take on those guys. They are better prepared than in years past to take on those guys. I think the changes that Georgia has made in the secondary to not as much put their guys on islands. I mean, I think, you look back at last year's game, and I've watched it a couple of times this week. There were a lot of times that Jalen Waddle was just running past Georgia cornerbacks, whether it was Eric Stokes, Tyson Campbell, Tyreek Stevenson, and Mark Webb at star, Richard LeCount and Lewis Cine at safety. Georgia was getting abused in the secondary.
You just named 3 guys who were drafted, including a first and a second rounder, as well as
and that second rounder went first overall in the second round.
Well, and then you've got Mark Webb, who was also drafted, Richard LeCount also drafted, and Lewis Cine, who's going to get drafted. That's 5 guys headed for the league.
And Tyreek Stevenson
Tyreek Stevenson going to the league, probably.
Yeah. So you're talking about 6 guys that are probably playing on Sundays here, whether they are now or will be in the future. I think that says a lot about what Alabama has had at wide receiver. I mean, you look back at last year's group, Devontae Smith, who won the Heisman. I think you could make a case that Jalen Waddle was even better than him when he was healthy.
Sure.
And so, to have that 1-2 punch, to have John Mechie as your third wide receiver, to have experienced guys like Slade Bolden around still, this Alabama group has been, even going back to previous matchups with Georgia, whether it's Jerry Jeudy or Henry Ruggs, guys that have been, impact players in these games. Georgia has had a hard time matching up against these guys, and Jamison Williams isn't going to be any easier to match up with. I just think Georgia is better prepared to match up with them. I think that the way that Georgia is able to generate pressure naturally doesn't put those guys, those defensive backs, that back end of the defense on an island as much. I think that you're seeing Georgia play zone defense a lot more when Kirby has been man, and nothing but that in the past. Doing so, says, hey, we will give up we will let you catch the ball in front of us, but we're going to stop you before the sticks. We're going to stop you before the end zone. And as you get closer and closer, that's less ground that we have to cover. So, in terms of Georgia's defensive approach, I think that they've done a good job of avoiding the big plays. I think that the 2 games that they have given up big plays, South Carolina and Tennessee, those have been some of the more explosive passing offenses that Georgia has played, and talented wide receivers in Josh Vann and Cedric Tillman for Tennessee. But I think that Georgia is well prepared to match up against these Alabama wide receivers, and that they're going to be able to put the pressure on Bryce Young. This Alabama offensive line has really struggled as of late, allowed 7 sacks last week against Auburn. Georgia had 7 sacks in the season opener against Clemson. They've in the other couple of SEC games that have been close within a touchdown, Texas A&M, LSU, Arkansas, they all had 4 sacks against Alabama, obviously with the Aggies coming out on top in that matchup. So I think that the key to beating this Alabama offense is getting pressure, and that is where Georgia has strived all season long.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And as you were saying that, what was kind of going through my mind, I started looking this up, and maybe it's a little fresher on your mind, but in terms of great wide receivers Georgia's seen this year, it's been somewhat limited, I would say. Justin Ross obviously was limited in that game one, still was playing, but maybe not 100%. Joseph Ngata had played a great game for Clemson. Then they shut down Traylon Burks when they played Arkansas. He was certainly one of the best they're going to face this year, or we're going to face. Nobody on Florida did much against
Wan'Dale Robinson.
Wan'Dale
Robinson's a pretty good wide receiver that Georgia did a good job of defending against. They didn't. Kentucky didn't have their number 2 option in Josh Ali in that game.
Sure. Yeah. So it's an interesting. That's an interesting matchup for me. I mean, the combination of 2 great receivers plus a great tight end. How do they have to scheme against that? Because I think that's the first time they've had it all year. I'm not saying they can't, and they should be very capable of doing so. But I think that's going to be a storyline in this. But you also mentioned those sack numbers, and to me, that's what's startling. I mean, when you're talking about Alabama, that's just not Alabama. I'm sorry. That's not the Alabama we've come to know over the years, I guess I should say. Clearly that's who they are this year. But, I think that there's probably, to me, this sets up really, really well for Georgia. And quite frankly, that makes me nervous for that reason, because it feels like when you start to feel good, that's when an Alabama can kind of swoop in on you. But Alabama's primary deficiency to me feels like that offensive line, and Georgia's strength is the front 7 on defense. So that seems like a perfect storm, in my opinion. Now Georgia's offense probably hasn't been tested in the way that Alabama's defense is going to test them. I think that's probably fair to say as well. I don't know that they faced a complete 11 that good. That's going to be a key in this as well. But I think, like I've said kind of consistently, at least, I feel that Georgia can be multifaceted in what they do offensively. I think that they can take what the opposing defense is going to give. And, Alabama's going to have to vary things up for that reason. But to me, I think Georgia can find a lane offensively and say, all right, look, this is what we're going with, whether that's attacking deep down the field, which they've done several times this year. I mean, Stetson Bennett's shown no fear of kind of unloading a ball when he needs to, or, hey, let's turn around and let James Cook, catch us, run a sweep, or line up as a slot, or, do all the various things he does, or, hey, let's grind it out with Zamir White, or, hey, let's let Brock Bowers run out here and, break off a block and find himself open. Georgia's done a great job, I think, utilizing their personnel this year. And to me, that seems advantageous to them. But again, I don't know. To me, it's a tough call because, like I said, they haven't faced anything like this Alabama defense. I'm not saying that they can't overcome that. I just think it's going to be a unique challenge, in my opinion.
Yeah, and with this Alabama defense, I think, and as well as Georgia's defense, the strength there is at stopping the run. Alabama, in terms of their offense, is limited with their running back situation, probably down to just one scholarship running back in the game. That's Trey Sanders, who's a very talented kid, second-year player for them. But they, Brian Robinson dealing with what looked like a hamstring injury, pulled hamstring. Nick Saban said it was a lower body strain, or pull. So I feel like it's safe to assume it's a hamstring there, and he may end up suiting up. He may give it a go, to at least try. But as Georgia fans saw with Kenny McIntosh dealing with a similar injury, it's hard to get back from that very quickly. And this is an injury he suffered against Auburn. In terms of Georgia's run game, I think that is where Alabama's strength is, just like Georgia's defense. Yep. Alabama's strength is in that front 7 and their ability to pass rush. I think that Georgia's offense is better prepared. Their offensive line is better prepared for that challenge. They've done a really good job of not letting Stetson Bennett and the quarterbacks get hit this year. They're second in the country for sacks with just 8. But I don't know that they've faced a pass rush quite like what maybe Clemson, but I don't know that they've faced one quite like what Alabama is going to offer. Will Anderson, quite possibly.
I don't know that they faced a player like Will Anderson. I mean,
no.
I don't know. And listen, we got this comment. We got this comment on the opening week podcast, and somebody commented and said, "Oh, well, I guess they shouldn't even bother to play the game." Because I guess the assumption was that we were heaping praise onto Alabama and somehow downgrading Georgia. I don't mean to say that at all. I just have a lot of respect for Alabama. I have a lot of respect for Nick Saban, and I have a hell of a lot of respect for Will Anderson. And I think every offensive player that he's faced this year and is going to face for the rest of this year would tell you the same exact thing. Because if you don't respect that guy, he's going to make you respect him in the way that Mike Tyson said many years ago. I'm going to keep it clean, but he said, "I will make you love me." And and that was the clean version, but he's going to make you respect him. And I think that's the thing. So, you can go into this with this nonchalant attitude of, oh, Georgia's untouchable this year. And to some degree, I think that's true. I think that Georgia has been the most consistent team in college football. They have been the most dominant team. But to look past Alabama is a fool's errand every single time. You should never, ever, ever do that. Don't ever do it, in my opinion.
No, I mean, they haven't won these national championships under Nick Saban for no reason.
Right.
But, to what that person was saying, I think both me and you, I mean, spoiler alert, I think both me and you are going to predict Georgia to win this game.
I am. Yeah.
I am. So, yeah. So, I think that, there is no reason to not respect what Alabama is and what they have been and what they are and what they're capable of. I think that we understand that, but we also understand that what Georgia is this year is something special, that they are, fully capable of playing with the team in Tuscaloosa, the team that the SEC championship has run through Tuscaloosa for many a years now. And most of the time, the national championship too. And there's a reason why. And most of the time,
Alabama wins them.
Exactly. And that is why they demand the respect of Georgia media, Georgia fans, Georgia team. And I don't think Georgia team is disrespecting Alabama in any way. I think that they are taking this game as seriously as possible. But going back to our conversation about the Georgia offense, I think where Georgia is going to have some success on offense is with Stetson Bennett, is in that passing game. Very similar to, what Alabama is going to try and do offensively. I think Georgia can have a little bit more success on the ground because they've got such a deep backfield. I mean, you know that they're going to go at least 3 or 4 deep in that rotation. Depends on whether Kendall Milton is going to play and whether Daijun Edwards is going to play. I think if Georgia fans are seeing Daijun Edwards in this game late, they're going to be pretty happy with the outcome. But I think that Georgia has the ability with this offense and with this passing game, with a confident Stetson Bennett, to get the ball downfield, to press the ball downfield, to move the chains. Stetson as a quarterback overall isn't, I think that he has really embraced the game manager role, which, I think when a lot of people hear that, they think it's a knock on him. Yeah. Not in any way is that a knock on him. I mean, he has been effective in doing that, and Georgia's 12-0 because of it. I think that, with his ability to take what's given to him, move the chains and just march down the field when the big play comes, when the opportunity for it comes, Georgia has hit on him. And whether that be to Jermaine Burton or Arian Smith when he was healthy, Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, A.D. Mitchell, Vlad McConkey. There are numerous pass catchers. Add in George Pickens for this game. Sure. Kyrus Jackson, if he's going to be healthy enough to go. I think that there are enough pass catchers in this Georgia offense. James Cook, you want to add in the running backs too. I think James Cook is going to be a big factor in this game. Didn't include him in the matchups and players to watch, but probably should have. And as I noted in that there were too many players to name that were very important to this game. James Cook is one of those that I did not name, but is very, very important in this game. I think that Georgia has the ability to use him in different ways. I think that I thought about this a little bit this week, and tell me if you agree or disagree here. I think that Georgia's game against Tennessee was a little bit of a dress rehearsal for this game against Alabama. I think that's why you saw the starters play the entire time. And I didn't think about it then, but having come out of Charleston Southern and Georgia Tech and seeing how Georgia handled those two games, they were quick to get the starters out there. They didn't want to risk anything. They knew that they didn't have to risk anything. But against Tennessee, A, that offense is capable of scoring, just like this Alabama offense is. But B, I think you wanted to get those guys a test, a 4-quarter battle, even if it wasn't a war on the scoreboard, they wanted to play for 4 quarters and kind of give a dress rehearsal. And in the same light, they did so with James Cook. I think that what they did with James Cook in that game is very similar game plan that they could use with James Cook in this game. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think it can go one of two ways, in my opinion. And that's either that, yes, this is the plan for James Cook and this is how they plan to use him. Or if not, that's some scary shit to put on film and make Alabama account for every time that guy hits the field. So to me, it's either, it can go either way. Right. And I think that's the beauty of it. I'm sure that was part of the process in putting that in is you've got a guy who suddenly every time he hits the field is a threat to do something different. And it's like I said, Georgia's offense has been multifaceted. Well, there's nobody more multifaceted on the offense itself than James Cook. And so
Brock Bowers might disagree, but
sure. No, that's true. He's got a rushing touchdown as well. So, but James is to me. Well, I'll say this too: the Tennessee game was James Cook's game. This season has been Brock Bowers' whole season. That was something that felt, I won't say out of place because I think we always knew that he was capable of doing something like that. But in terms of the overall narrative of the season, it's not necessarily what James Cook's done all year. It was a little bit different from what we've seen from him, I guess, consistently game in and game out.
I do think that he has been a very improved running back. And I think that, and he's also been a very improved pass catcher. I mean, looking back, and I thought about this and had to double check, but it was true. Jordan last year against Alabama, Cook caught that 80-yard touchdown. That was his first receiving touchdown in college. He's caught 4 more since then.
Sure.
In very limited amount of time. I mean, that was the 4th game of last year. He played in maybe 5 more. He missed the bowl game. He might have missed 1 or 2 with injury last year. And then obviously the 12 games this year, to add to that total, did you add that kind of skill set to his game? I think he's always been capable of it, but it has really come out under Todd Monken as the offensive coordinator.
No, I agree with that completely. I came into this year wondering if we were ever going to see the James Cook that we all thought James Cook could be. And I was like, well, this is kind of it. Like either the guy is or isn't this guy. And I think he's proven that he is. He's the Swiss Army knife kind of player that we assumed. But yeah, he's an interesting factor in this. And like you said, I do think that there's some truth definitely to that Tennessee game being a precursor to this Alabama game, primarily because Tennessee's the best team Georgia played the rest of this year, in my opinion. Clemson maybe would have been a different story if you'd have caught them at a different time of the year. I don't know. Maybe they knocked some rust off. Probably not, based on what we saw from them the rest of the way down the stretch. But they could have probably given Georgia maybe a better game than they did game 1. I don't know.
It was still a single score game.
It was.
And I think that I think that Clemson team that played them then, maybe not offensively, but in terms of a team effort, that might have been one of their best in terms of, especially defensively. I think that, neither team scored an offensive touchdown in that game.
Yeah, they just to me Tennessee felt dangerous. Tennessee's
What about Arkansas? I mean, they came in as a top 10 team, and granted, Georgia ran them out of the building in the first quarter.
Right.
Kentucky came in with momentum as the number 11 team. Auburn on the road came in ranked off of a big win over LSU there. I think that Georgia played some dangerous teams.
Tennessee, I think Tennessee was so dangerous though because they were the team that it felt like had proven themselves to be like that new style SEC offense of like we can score it at will at any time. We from anywhere, it doesn't matter. We've got big play capability. And I think that that's what has taken hold, not only in the SEC, but across college football. I mean, we've seen the offensive shift. And I think that they were the team that probably best embodied that Georgia played all year. Now, like you said, maybe with Josh Ali, perhaps you could have seen a little bit more out of Kentucky as well. But I agree with your point. I think Tennessee was a good dress rehearsal for this game. And let's not forget Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee gave Alabama a game. I mean, until pretty late into it. I mean, I think it was midway through the third, I think that Alabama really started to run away with it. But for at least 2 quarters, I mean, they were able to stay with them. So that's not nothing. You've talked a lot about players to watch, and I know we've got keys and all that coming. But, when you're talking about this, I guess, is there one guy that this boils down to for you? I mean, is it Stetson Bennett? Is Stetson the guy who has to do this on Saturday, or is it? I mean, is there a defensive guy who has to be in charge of this? Is there a guy that we've just been waiting on, like James Cook, who, needs the breakout game here and could really shift the tide? I mean, to steal the pun, I guess. I mean, what are you? I don't know. I mean, when you're looking around at this Georgia Bulldogs team, Palmer, is there somebody that has to have a big day, or is it just the usual suspects?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think, like I said, in that matchups and players to watch, there are too many guys that you could name in this game that are really important to the outcome. I think that that's what it takes to beat Alabama. It takes an overall team effort, and it's going to take, and that's how Georgia's done it all season. They've had a dominant team defense and an offense that counters that very well. I think that I will go with Stetson Bennett as my, offensive player that you've got to watch. Just because I think when you get into this time of the year, postseason football, whether it's college, high school, pro, whatever, you need your quarterback to be playing well. And I think that, I think that it's very evident when you look back at Stetson Bennett last year in this Alabama game and the improvements that he has made in just over a calendar year. Who would have thought that Stetson Bennett would be Georgia's starting quarterback in the 2021 SEC championship game when he got benched against Florida last year? I mean, he threw 6 interceptions in a 3-game span. 3 against Alabama, 2 against Kentucky, 1 against Florida. And he wasn't playing poorly against Florida. He got banged up. And then ultimately we saw how it played out with JT Daniels coming in and leading Georgia's offense, to new heights in those final 4 games. I just think that this is the time where you've got to have your quarterback playing really well. And it takes good quarterback play to beat Alabama. It takes good quarterback play to win SEC championship games. It takes good quarterback play to win a national championship. And I think that Stetson Bennett has risen to the occasion all year long. And I have a feeling that he's going to do it again. I think that defensively, obviously that is a big matchup. I just think that, Georgia's defense against this Alabama offense, I think that Alabama's going to be able to score. I think that they're not going to be able to score at will like they might have been able to in other games. I think that what you've got to be able to do is it's going to put a little bit more pressure on Stetson in that offense to, put up points, to say, hey, you do that, we'll do this. And to go, toe-to-toe with an offense that's going to be able to put up some points. I think that they're going to be challenged by this Alabama defense, but I think that this Alabama defense is a little bit weaker than that Alabama offense is. Where Alabama has the weaknesses on defense, I think that they are a little bit weaker than that Alabama offense. And so, I think that the pressure is on Stetson to be the guy to win this game. You could say the pass rushers to get to Bryce Young and throw off that passing game. I think if you do that, you're very much setting yourself up for success, whether it's giving your offense short field or just keeping Alabama off the board. But I think that ultimately it comes down to, can Georgia put up points, that can hang with a very good Alabama offense?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the passing game too, because I think it's critical. But I'm gonna say I'm going to use a collective here, and I'm going to say the wide receivers. I think that somebody out of that group has to, whether it's, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. But Jermaine Burton needs to have a Missouri type of game, or Ladd McConkey needs to have an Auburn type of game, or Kearis Jackson needs to come through with a performance that people have been waiting on for him this season, or George Pickens is back in full strength and he and Don Blaylock, swoop in like Batman and Robin and save the day for Georgia. Somebody in that group, I think, has to be there, because they're going to have to challenge downfield.
Well, and that goes hand in hand with Stetson.
Right, exactly. But I think that somebody's got to be that weapon for Stetson, because I don't have a lot of concerns about Stetson. I think Stetson's going to be fine. Personally, I think that he should have confidence when it comes to playing Alabama. He had Georgia up 21-0. I think that the line has given him some time.
21.
I'm sorry, 21. Yeah, 21 by the half, wasn't it? 21 and a half last year?
It was 24-20 at the half.
At the half, yes. Well, right, yeah. Exactly. He's had success against Alabama, is what I'm saying. I think there should be some confidence for him in that regard. To me, those guys got to help him out. Brock Bowers is going to do his thing. I think that he'll make a play at some point. It just seems like that's an inevitable to me. But the wide receivers from week to week have been a little bit more hard to predict, I guess, who's going to be the guy there. And for me, that's what I think one of those guys has to be on Johnny on the spot this week. And hey, listen, if Jermaine Burton can replicate that performance he put together against Missouri, that could go a long way to helping the effort, I would think.
So if those are our offensive players of the game, let's go quick defense. Who do you think's got to step up on defense to be that guy? I know that I mentioned it. We've mentioned it as a whole. But I think that this defense, just as much as pressure is on the offense, there's the pressure on this defense to live up to the standard that they've set for themselves, which is a very high one.
Yeah, no, it's that idea of like, are they who we think they are? Right. For me, I think it's probably going to have to be, I think it's going to come down to those safeties, because I think the corners have played really well to this point, and Lewis has done a good job, but, is Chris Smith 100%? And if not, is Dan Jackson, the former walk-on, an unexpected contributor this year, is he a primetime player ready to hang with these Alabama receivers? To me, those guys become all important, because those guys, man in the back end, are who you're charging essentially with limiting those monster plays that can be big momentum shifters in this one. And like I said, that one has been a situation where, like I said, with the Chris Smith thing, the Chris Smith injury and kind of the lingering nature of that. And is he 100%? Is he not? Dan Jackson. I think the safeties for Georgia are kind of where this all comes down, because I really don't have a lot to say about the front seven. I think that those guys are going to be fine. I think they'll be able to find their spots, get there. And quite frankly, I just don't think Alabama's going to have much when it comes to the running game because of how limited they are in the numbers and the depth at the position, as well as the offensive line's inability to kind of protect.
Yeah, I will put it on that front seven. I think that because that is a weakness for Alabama, that offensive line and their ability to protect. And because the passing game is going to be such an emphasis, I agree that the pressure is going to be on the safeties and the corners to, hold up in the passing game. But I think that, all season long, we kind of, even going into the season, we thought Georgia has to have a front seven that can, that can hold up and that can get to the quarterback to take some of the pressure off of those DBs. So I would look to some of these pass rushers, whether it's Trayvon Walker, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter. There are 10 guys on this Georgia roster that have more than one sack this season. And I think that, Nolan Smith is somebody that doesn't have 2 sacks. He's got 1.5 on the year, but I think that he could be in for a big game. I think that, the obvious candidates of Nakobe Dean and Channing Tindall, which, to me is a little bit more surprising to see an inside linebacker coming up with those kind of stats. 5 sacks for Nakobe and 4.5 for Tindall. You've also got 4.5 from Robert Beal. I think that he's a guy that could step up in this game. I think that overall, you've just got so many guys that in that Georgia pass rushing group that, maybe one guy doesn't have the Will Anderson type of day that has, 3-4 sacks solo. But I think that you could see maybe possibly a day like they had against Clemson where, they just put the pressure on Bryce Young. They say, hey, our best chance to prevent some of these big plays from these talented Alabama wide receivers is by not letting out Bryce Young even throw the ball to them and putting him on his back. I think that, those guys that I mentioned are going to have a big day.
Yeah, I could see that. And, you mentioned it's interesting to see those numbers from inside linebackers. Goes back to that old thing Jordan Davis says all the time, 2 on me, somebody's free. I mean, those guys are finding those lanes behind those big boys and they're taking advantage and getting in there and affecting it. I guess dust settling on Saturday. Like we mentioned, I think both of us are going to pick the Dogs to win in our bold predictions for Saturday, but an MVP for this game, if that's the case. Who's the one name that this is gonna, I don't know. I mean, of course this is just speculation, but are we talking about Stetson Bennett out there hoisting this trophy and being the guy and, erasing all the doubters and the haters and, changing the whole narrative, continuing this Disney-esque story that he's got going on? Or is it maybe Big Jordan Davis out there just, eating bodies and swallowing worlds? I mean, who's your guy?
So Clint and I talked about this. I don't think it'll be Jordan Davis. I think that his impact in this game could be a little bit more limited because of what Alabama isn't going to do, trying to run the ball. I think that he will still play because of who he is and because of what he's capable of. I just think that you are going to see him, on the sideline more than you might expect because Alabama is going to just be trying to pass the ball, with ease. I will say Stetson, because, he told us on Monday that, and I wrote in my story this week that he leaves the storytelling up to others. He just goes out there, he focuses on football, he goes out there and plays, tries to do his job as best as he can do. And I think that in doing so, he has given us this, like you said, Disney storytelling narrative. I think that it would just be, perfect, the perfect ending, not the perfect ending to it. I think that it would be just another chapter in Stetson's story. I think that, this is his game to win, maybe a little bit of a revenge game for him, given the fact that he didn't play all too well against Alabama last year. And I think that, like I said, Georgia's defense, they're gonna be challenged and they're going to have to play well. But I think that the pressure is on this offense to play really well and match what the defense is having to do.
Yeah, I can see that. Makes sense to me. That's a good pick. I mean, it's kind of got to come down to him, right? I mean, I think if Georgia is going to possibly live and die by Stetson Bennett on Saturday. So that's a good pick in my opinion. I'm going to go with Nakobe. I think Nakobe is the guy on Saturday.
Just thinking you were going to go with a wide receiver with everybody that you had been mentioning.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, though, right? I'm just saying one of those guys has to make a play somewhere along the line. Somebody's got to step up and do their thing.
I will say, if a wide receiver has a big day, like I said earlier, it means Stetson has a big day, and the voters probably give it to the quarterback and continue that fairy tale.
So I'm going with the captain of the defense. I'm going with Nakobe because I think that he's one of those guys who's just so multi-tooled. He can do it all. If you need him to drop into coverage and hang with guys, he's fast enough to do that. His football instincts are outstanding. He can rush the passer. He's proven that. He's a tackle machine. He's going to be able, I think, to operate in the way that Roquan Smith was, and at this point in his career, where basically they've just said, "See ball, get ball. You figure it out. You're smart enough. We trust you to do this." And I think Nakobe's capable of doing that. And I think that on Saturday that benefits him to a large degree. I think he has a good day. Boy, we've talked the hell out of this thing, this SEC championship, which makes sense, right? But we'll have more. We'll have plenty of reaction to come after that. Shifting gears, though, real quick here before we wrap things up. Little recruiting to get to, as is the tradition. We try to work a little bit of that in each show if we can. And big week so far, right? I mean, gosh, you expect that. It's all about the lead up and this monster game and this clash of the Titans. Meanwhile, Georgia's on the recruiting trail, just out here picking up dudes left and right. Sean Washington, 4-star defensive lineman out of the Louisiana area, New Orleans-based guy, comes on board on Monday evening. 6'4", 309 pounds, big old boy for the defensive line. Super strong, a guy who on film to me, just a run stopper, man. Just a guy who is able to get in there and clog holes. You can see him affect the passer, and I think that he's capable of doing that. But I think at this point in his career, he's a very, very capable run stopper. He's a guy who, like I said, he can fill a hole pretty easily. So big pickup for Georgia there. Again, when does the train end for 2022? Who knows? It's anyone's guess at this point. How many people can they even fit into this class? I don't know. I'd be lying to tell you I did. So anyway, looking forward to it. I mean, I guess, your thoughts, any thoughts on that 2022 class, Sean Washington? I mean, this pickup in general, Palmer. I mean, are you kind of surprised, I guess, in the way that I am, that this is happening, I guess, during SEC championship week?
I'm more surprised that we've seen evidence of the coaches getting out on the road during SEC championship week. I think that says a lot about the recruits that they are going to see.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me that they are, getting a commitment during SEC championship week. I think that a lot of the work before a commitment goes in, a lot of the work that goes into a commitment goes in before a commitment, and whether that was during the summer, during the fall, I know Washington was on campus. I believe he was on campus for an official, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, keep up with the recruiting a little bit. Team keeps me busy enough, but I think that it's a big pickup for them on the defensive line, where they are bound to lose a couple of guys, and certainly lose their big run stopper in the middle in Jordan Davis. So I don't know that you can expect anybody to just immediately step in and fill that role. Big shoes to fill there, quite literally. But I think that Georgia is certainly making steps in the right direction in this class of 2022, with several strong defensive linemen to just continue the dominance that they've had on defense. The class just as a whole is shaping up, and we will talk about it a lot more over the coming weeks as signing day approaches and comes and goes. There's plenty of coverage there. I think that as a whole, this class is really shaping up to be something special. Georgia's number one on the field, and they're number one off the field right now in terms of recruiting.
and number one in our listeners' hearts. And that's what's the most important thing. When you're talking about it, I mean, listen, there's no replacing Jordan Davis, just because there aren't many people on earth that are the size of Jordan Davis and can do the things that Jordan Davis does at his size. So, shifting gears real quick, also out of the 2022 class, 2023 comes through on Tuesday. A big pickup, a guy that I don't think Georgia fans are very familiar with, a name that kind of came onto the radar pretty quickly and then just sort of evolved really fast, it felt like. But a relationship that when we talked to his coach has kind of been brewing for some time. That's Raquez Rock McElderry out of Anniston High School in Anniston, Alabama. Interesting to see the Dogs dip into the Yellowhammer State during Georgia-Alabama week and pull out a 4-star guy, an offensive lineman. To me, looks like a young Justin Schaefer, and probably a little bit more developed prospect at this point. Great run blocker, guy who can take it up to the second level when he needs to. Super strong. I mentioned on Twitter the other day, to me, Rock is a great nickname for this kid because that's what he is built like. That's what he looks like, and that's how he plays. I mean, he looks like he's hitting you with stones when he strikes you. So another good pickup for 2023. Dogs juggling a couple of classes right now, as they have as has kind of become the standard for them, over the last couple of years. Impressed with what they've done on both ends of it. And Raquez, just another great pickup for them. 2 guys already committed to that offensive line in 2023, Bo Hughley out of Langston Hughes in South Atlanta, and now Raquez McElderry, also known as Rock. And I love both of those pickups. I think that's a great start, especially in 2022, where it feels like, I'm not saying that these guys are lower tier players by any stretch of the imagination, but perhaps more developmental players, not necessarily first crack at it guys who are going to start day one. I mean, I don't think there's an Andrew Thomas in this group necessarily. Now, if you were to land a guy like Ernest Green, perhaps that might switch things up a little bit. He's a very capable guy, but very tough to do that. To me, the 2023 guys, though, off to a fantastic start there. So love what they're doing in the recruiting trail. And like you said, after this SEC championship wraps up, baby, it's showtime for Jake Russo. That's all I know. I got a big week ahead of me next week, and we trust that you'll be following along as you have for all the SEC championship game coverage that we've had this week. And we've had some great stuff led by Palmer Toms. So Palmer, shout out to you. Great work this week, man. It's been awesome to read. Parting thoughts, anything you want to send the folks out with? Something to I don't know, give them to listen, give them to boost the confidence. Maybe if they're listening to this while they're pulling in, looking on the bins, ready to crack that first cold beer of the day and just kind of get this thing up and rolling. Anything you want to send off to the people with?
No, I like we said, I think both of us are predicting a Georgia win here. Certainly would be a big one. And I think regardless of how this game goes on Saturday, Georgia fans will be very happy by the next time that we come at you on Sunday with a little bit of good playoff news for there. Making some travel plans for New Year's Eve, either in Dallas or Miami.
Yeah, excited to spend it with you, Palmer. Hope we can have a little smooch at midnight even, maybe. Well, folks, I appreciate you tuning into this edition of Dog Walk Talk. Another fun episode. Get over to DawgsHQ. Check everything out. We've got you loaded up with SEC preview coverage. And like we said, we'll have everything post-game. We'll have all the narratives covered. After that, a deep dive definitely on where the Dogs are bound bowl-wise, certainly coming your way. And then, like I said, the shift goes into recruiting prior to that bowl destination. So early signing day is upon us, and we'll be here before we know it. So looking forward to it. And like I said, the most wonderful time of the year. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this edition of Dog Walk Talk, presented to you by DawgsHQ. We'll see you later.